Truth Unveiled here, and today I have a very urgent report to share with you. We're going to be talking about all of what your government's doing and all of the preparedness plans that they're having because it seems like it's not one, not two, but so many. And the question is, why all of this preparation, especially right now? Now, I'm here at Activist Post, and it says, is the big one coming? FEMA increases earthquake preparedness activities, and that's not the only thing that FEMA's doing. And you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. But it's no secret that the West Coast is waiting for what they call the big one. From fictionalized versions like the movie San Andreas, which although full of dramatic special effects and creative license, still had a few things to teach us more like predictive programming, to unsettling novels like Cascadia, which is all the more alarming for its scientific accuracy. Everyone is imagining what the worst could be headed the way of Washington, Oregon, and California. Now, it's no surprise or coincidence that many scientists have already begun predicting giant earthquakes that are supposed to erupt at any moment within the Cascadia fault line, which is towards the northwest of America, as well as the San Andreas fault line, which is the California area, not to mention the New Madrid as well, which is right in the center of the United States, around the same region as the Mississippi. And just to refresh in your memory, we're going to go over some of the ways that your government is preparing like never before, as well as certain drills that have already been taking place, such as Cascadia Rising, which we'll talk about later on in just a moment to come. But what's interesting is I'm here at the DHS's website, which says September is National Preparedness Month. And we know the DHS is making plans and preparations of their own. You're going to know exactly what I mean. But it says, while we think about preparedness all year round, National Preparedness Month is an important time to take stock of the value it has to first responders, emergency managers, communities, and many other entities. At S&T, we provide the tools and technologies to facilitate planning before disasters happen so our stakeholders are empowered to be more resilient against natural and man-made threats. And could that explain all of the preparedness that we saw in Vermont, as well as all of these major drills like never before that we're seeing not only nationwide but also worldwide too? I wonder why that's the case. Now, this is just to keep you updated with all of the national preparedness plans that your government has been conducting between this month and next month, and so that's why I'm here at ready.gov that also talks about the National Preparedness Month, and it says September is recognized as National Preparedness Month, or NPM, which serves as a reminder that we all must take action to prepare now and throughout the year for the types of emergencies that could affect us where we live, work, and also where we visit. Am I saying anything big's going to happen in September? No, I do not know. I do not set dates, but it's always good to be prepared for any type of disaster, whatever that disaster may be. But then it says, due to the success of last year's theme, Don't Wait, Communicate, Make Your Emergency Plan Today, we'll be returning for this September with the continuing emphasis on preparedness for youth, older adults, and people with disabilities, and others with access and functional needs. Thank you for taking time. Help make America more prepared for emergencies. But what if I told you that your government is prepared indeed? And speaking of preparation, another way that FEMA is preparing for everything is Preparathon, and this is supposed to take place towards the end of September on September 30th. But it says here from Community FEMA's website that America's Preparathon is a national community-based campaign that moves individuals from awareness to action by preparing for relevant hazards through group discussions, drills, and innovative communications-related products. The campaign increases the number of individuals who understand which disasters could happen in their community, know what to do to be safe and mitigate the damage, and also help their community do the same. America's Preparathon takes a whole community approach to disaster preparedness with registered preparedness actions at the grassroots level across the nation. And this automatically reminds me of Mr. Obama's statement that he made with FEMA back towards the beginning of June, talking about how everyone should get the FEMA app just in case of an emergency. I wonder where that's going to lead you. But then this goes on to say that the campaign offers easy to implement resources to help individuals, organizations, and communities practice simple, effective actions. Preparedness actions can be scaled from individual actions to community-wide events. And once again, this is just a brief review of Cascadia Rising 2016, which took place back in June of 2016. Now, as you can see from an actual bulletin from FEMA, this was the actual exercise scenario where it even says science points to a large 8.0 to 9.0 magnitude Cascadia subduction zone earthquake ripping across the 800-mile CSZ fault line on average once every 200 to 500 years. But how do they really know that? And do you really believe it's science? Let's keep going. Then it says that the last major CSZ earthquake and tsunami occurred in 1700. Then it talks about some of the other major earthquakes that occurred in places such as Indonesia, Chile, and northeastern Japan back in 2011. I wonder if CERN had anything to do with that. But then it talks about the purpose, how they want to improve joint operations because that's what they're telling you. Then it says they want to ramp up exercise events and have workshops and procedures and plans. And the culminating exercise will be a 4-day functional exercise which occurred back on June 7th through the 10th of 2016, in which emergency operations centers or EOCs at all levels of government and the private sector will activate to coordinate simulated field response operations both within their jurisdictions and also with neighboring communities, the states of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, FEMA, and major military commands. And then it talks more about it and the capabilities tested, and it also talks about operational communications as well as many other capabilities that they're trying to hold with this, as well as many of the participants. And mind you, this was no regular drill, folks. Oh no, this was huge because other key partners also included major U.S. military commands, including the U.S. Northern Command and U.S. Transportation Command, that conducted simulated strategic airlift and actual maritime disaster logistics exercises, along with the National Guard field exercise play as part of the drill, not to mention the major cities, over 50 counties, tribal nations, state and federal agencies, and private sector businesses, as well as non-governmental organizations across the 3 states, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, who were also in attendance. Now, what's also very interesting and suspicious about all of this is that mainstream media has also been pushing what's called and known as the New Madrid seismic zone, and we've been seeing that going off like never before with earthquakes in Oklahoma, which we're going to talk about later on. But this page right here says that the New Madrid seismic zone, or the NMSZ, is the most active seismic area in the United States that's east of the Rocky Mountains, and this is according to the Missouri Geological Survey. The NMSZ is located in southeastern Missouri, northeastern Arkansas, western Tennessee, western Kentucky, and southern Illinois. Southwestern Indiana and northwestern Mississippi are also close enough to receive significant shaking from large earthquakes occurring in this region. The active faults in the NMSZ are poorly understood because they are not expressed at the ground surface where they can be easily studied. Or maybe this is something that we should harp on, if you know what I mean. But then it says the faults are hidden beneath 100 to 200 foot thick layers of soft river deposit soils called alluvium. Fault scarps and traces in the soft alluvium erode in a very short time or may be rapidly covered by new deposits, thereby quickly hiding evidence of earthquake fault lines. Faults in places like California, where rocks are at or near the ground surface, are much easier to study because the faults are readily found, seen, measured, and analyzed. And as you can see here, here's a map of where these faults take place. As you can see, this is Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky, and Illinois. And it's no surprise because just recently, actually, Oklahoma has just experienced its largest earthquake on record. What is that really telling us? And it says that the earthquake that shook Pawnee, Oklahoma on September 3rd, so just a few days ago, is now the state's largest trembler on record, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, or USGS, which just upgraded the magnitude to a 5.8. It was previously at magnitude 5.6, but further analysis of the seismic recordings from the event found the quake size to have a bigger moment magnitude according to the USGS. Moment magnitude, which is based on the total energy released by the event, is considered a more accurate measure of magnitude than that of the now rarely used Richter scale, the USGS says. And the reason that I'm sharing all of this with you is because does your government know something that you don't know? Are they preparing for something that you don't know and that you're not aware of or that you may not be aware of? Is that the case? And are they telling you right in front of your face what's about to happen before it actually happens? I will let you be the judge of that. But now I'm here at the Central U.S. Earthquake Consortium, and the reason that I'm here is because I wanted to share with you all of the events and preparations that your government is continuing to prepare each and every single day between this month and even next month. And it talks more about how September is National Preparedness Month, which we just already went over. And it even talks about the earthquake in Oklahoma that we just went over. But there's also this, which I'm going to talk more about right now, which following National Preparedness Month, CUSEC will again be participating in the Great Shakeout Earthquake Drill, which is set for Thursday, October 20th at 10:20 a.m. local time. The shakeout is another dedicated time to practice how to be prepared and stay safe for earthquakes and other disasters. Again, I ask, why all of these preparations and disasters? In 2015, more than 40 million people participated in shakeout drills around the world, practicing how to drop, cover, and hold on in the event of an earthquake. Then it talks about some more FEMA trainings that are set for this October. You can also look at their calendar over here. As you see, they have so many earthquake trainings when it comes to FEMA at the very end of September, and then of course America's Prepare-a-thon, which is September 30th, which we just went over earlier, and then October you see there are so many more events with FEMA as well, and then the Great Shakeout Earthquake Drill, which we're going to go over right now. Now here is the actual website for Shakeout 2016, and like I said, this event is going to be as of October 20th at 10:20 a.m. local time. And as you can see, it says Great Shakeout Earthquake Drills, and these are supposed to be the number of participants who are participating. And as you can see, as of today, more than 20 million participants are registered in 2016 Great Shakeout Earthquake Drills. And much of this comes from schools and districts that are throughout the region of America. And as you can see it by region. So in central US, there's over 2 million who are supposed to take part. In northeastern US, there's supposed to be over 230,000. And then in southeast US, it's supposed to be over 1.3 million. In the state of Utah alone, it's going to be 1 million who participate in this. And then of course, we have Washington State, which is close to 770,000. And then we also have other regions such as southern Italy, Puerto Rico, and even some provinces in Canada that are also going to be taking place in these drills. And of course, it's interesting because not only are colleges and universities and schools taking place with a number of over 13 million if you add them together, but you also have local government, state government, federal government, including your lovely military, not to mention businesses and nonprofit organizations, and the list goes on from there. So then you're probably wondering, well, what's the big deal? Why am I even talking about all of this? What is all of this leading up to? The big deal is that your government is preparing like never before to put you into FEMA camps literally. And no, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy truth, because the reason that they're feeding you and brainwashing you this agenda that these fault lines haven't gone off for over 200 years or so and have yet to produce the big one. Do you really believe a word they're telling you? All these fault lines just so happen to be due for a giant earthquake within the same time? Doesn't sound like a coincidence to me. Sounds like it's designed and planned and staged ahead of time. Because everything is set and ready to go. The question is, are you? Because when things do start hitting the fan, which is going to be sooner than you think, your government already has the military police state ready to go. The reason you're seeing all of these military tanks and the reason that you're seeing all of these police all over the place is because they're about to lock down America. And at this point, folks, all they need is another 9/11. All they need is another excuse to what? Lock down the nation, just like they've locked down France for well over a year. And mind you, this was just practice. Now, what you're looking at, I've gone over many times, but I'm just going to reiterate these things once again and this documentation because it's so important that you see it with both your eyes open. But this is called HR 645, which was introduced to the 111th Congress, the first session, as of January 22nd, 2009, and it's called the National Emergency Centers Establishment Act. And And what this act does is that this act gives your government, your Department of Defense, as well as the Secretary of Homeland Security and the DHS, the right to fund these FEMA camps and emergency centers. And it even says that they do what? To establish national emergency centers on military installations. Well, why would they need to do that? And then they tell you that the purpose is just to provide temporary housing, medical, and humanitarian assistance to individuals and families dislocated due to an emergency or national disaster. They also tell you that to provide centralized locations for the purposes of training and ensuring the coordination of federal, state, and local first responders. Then they also tell you that it's to provide centralized locations to improve the coordination of preparedness, response, and recovery efforts of government, private, and not-for-profit entities and faith-based organizations, as well as to meet other appropriate needs as determined by the Secretary of Homeland Security. And what's even worse about all of this is not only how they designate all these military installations to be used as national emergency centers, but then they even tell you the location of these national emergency centers. And in this document alone, they say that the areas consist of FEMA, a Federal Emergency Management Agency, regions 1, 2, and 3. And they tell you all of the different regions that this is supposed to be conducted, that these FEMA camps are supposed to be conducted. Why are they even using such jargon? And of course, we cannot forget our favorite. Now, I've gone over this one before many of times, but Mr. Obama has signed into office unconstitutional executive orders, as well as all of your lovely presidents before him, including National Defense Resource Preparedness Act, which was passed as of March 16th of 2012. Now, the reason this document is so important and the reason this executive order is very interesting and suspicious indeed is because Mr. Obama has already signed off on this without the approval of people like you and me. Mr. Obama has been signing laws and signing draconian laws left and right, and he's not the only one, because Mr. Bush and all those other ones at the top have done the exact same thing. But what this really means is that in the event of any national emergency to be declared in America, the United States must have an industrial and technological base capable of meeting national defense requirements and capable of contributing to the technological superiority of its national defense equipment in peacetime and in times of national emergency. But what is that also talking about? That also includes what? Plans to put you into FEMA camps. You can even look up all of the executive orders that the government has passed, even ones back then, that all talk about how your government has the legal right. They can control all of the seaports, and they can control all of the transportation. They can control all of the land in your house and your kids and even you, and they can have the so-called legal right to place you and remove you from your home to a so-called place of shelter and emergency in the event of a national emergency. And for those who do not comply, will be seen as terrorists. Not to mention how you will be forced out of your will to do what your government tells you. And by the way, your pastors are preparing for this too. Just look up the National Clergy Response Team and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, this document I've gone over many times before, but I'm just reiterating it once again to tell you that no, I'm not making any of this stuff up. You can look up all of the executive orders, you can look up all of the text, and you can see exactly what your government's doing. Just look it up. I'm telling you, this is some real serious stuff. But now I'm actually at the Army's website, and I'm showing you what's called Internment and Resettlement Operations, also known as FM3-39.40, and it comes from the headquarters of the Department of the Army. Now, because this document is well over 300 pages, we're not going to go over it to its entirety, but what this document is, in summary, is how the FEMA camps and prison camps will be run by your military, and they have everything outlined in this one document. I'm telling you, it's all there. Chapter 1 talks about internment and resettlement, and then Chapter 2 talks about internment and resettlement in support of the spectrum of operations in the different military operations, as well as Chapter 3 talking about command and staff roles and responsibilities on these facilities. Now, chapter 4 is interesting because it talks about capture, initial detention, and screening, as well as detainee flow and how they have detainees and list detainees, and how they even show in chapter 4 that the detainees will be placed on helicopters and airplanes and other means of transportation, just like we've seen with the UN vehicles everywhere. Interesting. As well as detainee operations and the facilities. And mind you, this also mentions what RFID technology, how they want to put a chip and implant a chip in you, just like the movie The Fifth Wave has even shown you. I'm telling you, you're the one living in a fantasy, not to mention confinement of U.S. military prisoners as well. Then they talk about use of force throughout this document too, and how even during times of riot, they have the so-called legal right to use of force on you. And then the document goes on from there. Chapter 8 talks about rehab of U.S. military prisoners and detainees, parole, transfer, or release of U.S. military prisoners and detainees. Again, they're not telling you who the detainees actually are, as well as resettlement operations. And then they talk about appendix, and once again, use of force and riot control. And the list goes on from there. And then if you actually look at the preface, it says that Field Manual, or FM 3-39.40, is aligned with FM 3-39, which is the Military Police Keystone FM, and it provides guidance for commanders and staffs on internment and resettlement operations. I wonder what they're really doing that for. Then it goes on to say that the manual addresses IR operations across the spectrum of conflict, specifically the doctrinal paradigm shift from traditional enemy prisoner of war, or EPW operations, to the broader and more inclusive requirements of detainee operations. But who are the detainees is the question. Because when you start piecing all of this together, then it starts to make sense. Now, this document is from the Army too. It says Army Regulation 210-35, Installations, Civilian Inmate Labor Program. Now, I've gone over this document before, and what's very interesting about this document in particular is that when I went to the Army's website, they just so happened to remove and deleted this document. I wonder why that's the case, because what this document is that it tells you who they classify and consider to be inmates and how they are to be treated in the times of prisons come martial law. And by the way, also it talks about military bases and how their military bases are to be converted into prison detention centers, and the document actually says that. But did you also know that these military bases are to be converted to FEMA camps with Walmarts to serve as underground tunnels in order to get to them? And if you don't believe me, you can also watch my Walmart video for more. But the actual document itself says, the summary says that this regulation provides guidance for establishing and managing civilian inmate labor programs on Army installations. It provides guidance on establishing prison camps on Army installations. It addresses record keeping and reporting incidents related to the civilian inmate labor program and or prison camp administration. But like I said, the question is, who do they consider to be their civilian inmates? And trust me, it's not just talking about those who have committed felonies. Oh no, it goes much deeper than you think. And then the contents talks about chapter 1, introduction, the actual program itself. Then it talks about the establishment of the program. And it also talks about how they're trying to do it on Army installations. But what's very interesting itself is chapter 4, when it talks about how they plan on reporting and record keeping all of their civilian inmates. And I'm going to leave all the helpful information in the description box below so you can see in plain black and white that this is what they're getting ready for. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha, because there's not a lot of time left. The question is, are you awakened to all of this? I hope so. But this is Truth Unveiled here, saying shalom.